Hi everyone, and welcome back to Wandering Wild. I'm Allison and I'm so glad you could be here today. Today is Friday, so that means it's Forgotten Friday. So what Forgotten Friday is here I talk about the animals that we don't have anymore because they've either gone extinct or are basically extinct. So I like to use Fridays to kind of highlight those animals. And by understanding why those animals aren't with us anymore, it can help us to realize what we need to do to better protect the animals we have now so that we don't lose them as well. So I'm really glad you could be here today. And so for the first installment of Forgotten Fridays, I've decided to highlight the Irish elk. Okay, so the Irish elk, or Irish giant deer, has the scientific name Megaloceros giganteus. The Irish elk is kind of a misnomer because, first off, it wasn't just found in Ireland. It was found all over Eurasia during the Pleistocene, from Ireland to Siberia to China. Also, it's not really an elk. It wasn't related to the current day American moose or American elk. Instead, they believe it was more closely related to things like the red deer or the fallow deer. So most scientists prefer to call it the Irish giant deer. But I like Irish elk, so that's what I'm going to call it here. The main reason it's called the Irish elk is because some of our best preserved fossils were found in Ireland in the bogs. Also, many large antlers are found all over hunting lodges and castles within Ireland, so that's where we get our best preserved specimens. So in order to study them most, we usually go to Ireland. So that's how it was named the Irish elk. Also, the Irish elk was very important when it came to extinction in general. Up until the 17th and 18th century, scientists didn't even have a process known as extinction. They pretty much believed that all the animals they saw around them were on the planet somewhere, even the fossils they found. And the reason they thought that maybe they couldn't find these animals was because they were in some yet unexplored part of the earth. However, when they started to find animals such as the Irish elk and they couldn't find a living species that kind of matched up with it, it wasn't a moose, it wasn't an elk, it wasn't a reindeer, they started to question this. And George Cuvier was the first to truly propose the concept of extinction. And this was monumental in science, to suddenly realize that maybe the animals we have today is only a small portion of the animals that have ever been on this earth. It makes you almost feel like you've missed out on something. Now, as far as size goes, the Irish elk is one of the largest deer species to ever exist, coming to about 7 feet at the shoulder and weighing from 1,200 pounds to 1,300 pounds. A big part of the elk were these huge antlers that are larger than any species we've known or found to date. We don't truly know why the Irish elk went extinct. There are several theories, and some of the top ones are: 1, that humans overhunted them, causing them to go extinct, and 2, that their antlers became a maladaptation. So what a maladaptation means is that through the process of sexual selection, males were having larger and larger antlers. So because a female liked larger antlers and would therefore mate with a male that had larger antlers, over time the deer in general had larger antlers. However, they think that this could have potentially been problematic, because if you're walking through the forest and you've got this huge rack of antlers on your head and you're catching branches and you're running into things, eventually it just becomes a bother and it slows you down. It may prevent you from getting food. It may prevent you from protecting yourself. It may be heavy. The third option is they think that because these deer started to arise during the Pleistocene, or the Ice Age, that as these glaciers receded and the climate changed, they lost a lot of the forest that they would use for forage. And when this happened, they weren't able to get the nutrients they needed. They also think that with this change in climate and therefore food that they didn't get the same minerals, and so then they couldn't create these large racks of antlers. And so because that was necessary for them to find a mate, they think that they may have overcompensated, eventually causing themselves to weigh too little or to not be nourished enough because they were trying to grow too big of antlers. So in the end, it was a perfect storm. But we don't really know for sure. I mean, we're going to continue to find out things, and maybe one day we'll know exactly why, but those are the 3 top reasons we think that the Irish elk may have gone extinct. Culturally, the Irish elk is still remembered. It's believed to be preserved in one legend in Middle High German called the Song of the Nibelungs, which talks about a dragon slayer, but he is mentioned to have been killing some sort of very large deer. And so they believe that that could have been what he was speaking about. It's also preserved in the controversial coat of arms of Northern Ireland, seen here. This species has also been selected by the Long Now Foundation as a candidate for de-extinction. De-extinction is a controversial process that through cloning or selective breeding could potentially bring back a member of or a similar animal to a specific species. Now, this hasn't been done, and it may never be done because it's so controversial, but it is something to be aware of. The Irish elk was probably a beautiful animal, and it's a shame that we wouldn't get to see it. However, it's important to realize that extinction isn't just caused by humans. Yes, we contribute. Yes, sometimes it's our fault. However, sometimes extinction is a natural process, and by one animal going extinct, it paves the way for a new species, or for a species to grow in ways it never could have before. So when you think about it, it could be a good thing, it could be a bad thing. But in the end, it's important to understand it either way. So here on Fridays, we make sure we remember those species that are no longer around. So check back in next Friday for another forgotten animal. But come back on Monday and Wednesday for new videos. As always, all of our sources are found below in the description box. And if you're interested in anything you heard about today, please comment down below and we'll have a discussion. Also, feel free to do your own research. The internet is such a wonderful source of information. Just make sure the information you get is reliable. So thank you for joining me here on Wondering Wild, and as always, stay wild and never stop wondering.